Welcome to Conscious Not Crazy. I'm Kori, your host, and I'm excited to be back. And I have a special guest today. And I feel grateful and blessed that he's given me his time and sharing it with all of my audience. And I'd like to introduce you to Cicone Prince. He is an international speaker, author, and he also is a coach. So he works one-on-one or in groups with individuals. And he has some exciting stuff to share. Cicone, welcome. And what I'd like to ask you is, just share a little bit about your journey and how you came to sitting right here on my podcast. You know, how you got to where you are today, and kind of your mission and vision.
Okay. Well, Corey, thank you first of all, for the opportunity, in fact, to be on your podcast, and I don't take it for granted, and I do appreciate you. How I got to where I am, that's a good question. There are pivotal moments in my life that have been catalysts for different things. My personal development journey started when I was in college, and I was dating this young lady, and things were going well and good and great until they weren't. And after the relationship ended, I found myself asking questions, but not necessarily of her, but of myself. I found myself questioning why I behaved a certain way, why I responded a certain way, why I reacted a certain way. I started to try to find out what about me and my personality that allowed me or made me to hold on for dear life in most, in fact, relationships. And I actually came to a conclusion that probably 80 to 85% of the relationships I've actually been in, it was a woman that ended it. And I was trying to figure out why, what is it about me? And so that started me on a personal development journey that honestly, it continues to this day. I really wanted to understand myself better. But what I started to see was that there were so many other people that really didn't become a student of themselves. And I tell people all the time, we'll ask questions of everybody else, but rarely do we ask questions of ourselves. And so understanding that, knowing who I was and who I am, it helps me to navigate life differently and better. I became a student of me. But then I also realized that I could help other people by teaching them the same thing, the same process. And it has to be in a moment where people are open to critiquing themselves, you
Right.
know, uh, in a non-threatening moment, asking ourselves questions about our behavior, our background, and our history. Now, as far as me being a speaking author coach, that didn't start until about 8 years ago. Well, actually 10 years ago now, because I was doing 3D animation, believe it or not. I had a
Oh,
company, I had a company called 3D Solution Providers, and we did 3D animation and illustration. And I was at an event in 2012, and while I was there, I got a call from the event organizers. And they actually told me that my company had been selected to be a part of a quick pitch business Olympics. And I had 3 minutes to pitch my business in front of the listening audience and a select panel of judges. So when I got the call that Thursday night, because it was Friday morning, that I had to do the pitch, I immediately started rehearsing my elevator speech because I wanted to make sure it was down packed. And one of the things that I loved about this conference is that they cut your mic. You had 3 minutes, and after that, the mic was cut. That was it. So it's like you got to make sure that you stay on point, stay on time. So I wanted to make sure, that I covered everything that I needed. But because of the nature of what I did, I oftentimes would keep in my pocket my cell phone, which had a copy of the animation on there. So what I did was I actually got to the event early. I saw that they had an AV system set up. I went and talked to the AV guy, and I said, "Hey man, can you play an MPEG video?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, well, can you copy this off my phone, and then I'm going to start my presentation. About halfway through, I'm going to ask you to play the video." And so we set that up. I was contestant number 8. I got called up. I started my speech and my spiel selling my services. While I was on stage, I had an epiphany. And that epiphany was that my words could be used for more than selling a product or service. My words could be used to help sell people on themselves.
I love it.
And that really brings me, and I didn't understand what was going on then, but later on, I wound up writing a book entitled "Are You Climbing the Wrong Mountain?"
I saw
about
that
finding
on your
about finding your true purpose, right? And so I tell people there are three things you can learn about being on the wrong mountain. The first thing is you can learn, okay, look, this is not it. I can scratch this off my list. This is not where I'm supposed to be. But even being on the wrong mountain, you can see the right one. That's where I'm supposed to be. So you can identify the right mountain. First thing, it's not where I'm supposed to be. The second thing is I can see the right one. And that's what happened to me while I was selling my products and services or pitching my products and services. I realized that's not where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be over here, encouraging, motivating people, inspiring people with my words. And so the third thing that I tell people that even that you can learn from climbing the wrong mountains, first thing you learn is that that's not where I'm supposed to be. The second thing is you can see the right mountain. But the third thing is once you've identified the right mountain, it's not going to take you that long to get up it because you have mountain climbing skills.
right.
There's stuff that you've learned even climbing the wrong mountain that you take with you. And so once I had that epiphany, I started to move into the area of personal development, into the area of motivational speaking with a platform of personal development. So I turned my book, Are You Climbing the Wrong Mountain, into a summit. So I was having an event. In fact, I had two here in Mobile. I had one in Pensacola and one in New Orleans. And I was going to have my fifth one in Atlanta, and that's when COVID hit. So I actually went to a virtual platform. But I learned something quickly by doing those events. They are costly, and it would really help if you had sponsors.
Right.
The problem I ran into is that it's really hard to get corporate sponsors for an Are You Climbing the Wrong Mountain summit, and they send their employees there, and they come back, hey, I'm in the wrong place, I quit. It's like,
Right.
so, so I had to pivot because I realized that personal development and leadership development are two sides of the same coin.
Right.
Because you can't lead others until you learn how to lead yourself. But once you learn how to lead yourself, the next logical step is to lead other people. And so that's when I created Next Level Leadership Summit, which I actually happen to have a shirt on here.
I love it. I'm going to have to come to one of your summits.
Yes, well, actually, once I start doing them again, we would definitely have you there. So I didn't do away with personal development. I actually teach leadership development from a personal development standpoint because a lot of people in leadership, they want to do this and do that and do what I say and do it, not follow my lead, not let me show you how it's done type thing.
Right. There's no, you
And
want modeling of behavior.
exactly, exactly. And so I incorporated that. I incorporated, in fact, leadership development with my personal development. But how we got to where we are now with my latest book, which is entitled Heal. Heal is an acronym for Help, Elevate, and Learn. Yes, I have a copy as well. And it's a guide for healing your inner child. Because one thing I discovered and learned is that a lot of people have current day behaviors that were seeded in their childhood.
100%.
Yeah, but see, they don't recognize and realize that's it. You know, in fact, they may have a childhood wound or a childhood trauma that gets triggered by certain events, certain circumstances, and they react. They don't respond. They react to it, and it's devastating. It causes them more than they want to pay. And so, and like I said on my podcast, and I've had you on my podcast, and I thank you again for being on there. My goal is not to end the conversation, but to start it.
Right.
I want people. I want to raise awareness to what, in my mind, is a little known fact, and I want to share light on how all of us deal with certain things that are based upon issues or situations or circumstances in our childhood. If we never identify the root cause of it, we'll keep going through the same cycle and not really understanding why. And one of my guests said, in fact, you're just dating the same person with a different face. And I was
Right.
like, wow.
Well, and you hear the saying that, and I'll say it from a spiritual perspective, God's going to keep giving you the same challenge until you do something to figure it out and to grow and to change. the same problem's going to keep showing up until we get it right. And
Right.
I
Right.
love everything I'm hearing you say, because for me, our messaging is very much the same, just a slightly different approach and a different path on getting there. But again, my journey began when I became a parent. I mean, the journey of personal development is a lifelong journey, but it was really put into motion when I became a parent and felt like, wow, I'm I don't feel like me. I'm reactive. This isn't who I am. This feels uncomfortable. What is going on here? This can't be right. Because I was losing my patience and I was yelling at my kid. And I'm like, this is not helping the behavior. And we were seeking resources. But what it comes down to, because what I do now is similar, but my goal is to support parents and educators, right? I want to get in front of people before they grow up. Let's rewire those pathways at a much younger age, and let's help support parents on rewiring their own pathways so they're modeling the appropriate behavior for the kid. And it's no different than a business. And really, the personal development and business development go hand in hand, because
Right.
business book, I teach parenting classes, but I read more business books than parenting books. All of these concepts are in any business book. Like I left right here on my desk. I've got, it is developing the leader within you. I'm trying to read all my books. I have several, but I read so many business books, and the concepts are not new, but really healed people heal people, hurt people hurt people. And what I hear you saying is what I talk about. We need to really dig deep and understand the why behind behavior. And I love the image of an iceberg. When people are reactive and triggered, it's the tip of the iceberg. But what's driving that reaction and trigger is what's below the water, what we can't see. And that's
Right.
that childhood trauma. And trauma can mean different things. There's trauma that's abuse, that there's different levels of trauma. But trauma could also be growing up in a shameful environment with a fear-based behavior management model, right? So
Right.
I know my generation was raised with, like, be respectful, be polite. So there's a lot of people pleasers. And that can be challenging as an adult to be a people pleaser. If that's not helpful, we need boundaries. But we feel like we've grown up to learn that if I have a boundary, I feel rude, but that's not what a boundary is. So I
Right.
think the overlap is so interesting. And I love that you're doing this work. And I think it's great. Organizations need it, leadership needs it, and our kids need it for sure. So
Right.
that is awesome. Yes, I love it, because heal is help, elevate, and learn. And
Right.
it's a lifelong journey. And when I get up and speak to parents, I just redid and worked on my presentations, which I'm always working on and changing. And I start with, how do you become the best parent you can be? And it's truly to become the best version of yourself. You have to heal yourself and understand yourself and model that for your kids.
And that is so so true. And I can't overstate that how important that is, because there are so many people that would just say, "Well, that's just the way I am."
Right.
I tell people it's not what you do, but why. Why are you like that? What caused that? What set you on that path? What gave you permission, or what happened to you? I've been reading this book by Oprah Winfrey and, in fact, Dr. Bruce Perry, and it's literally entitled "What Happened to You." Not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you.
Right.
Because if you can understand what happened, then you can figure out how to change it, how to make adjustments, how to get healthy coping mechanisms that will allow you to respond and not react. I noticed you mentioned earlier about, in fact, reacting, and I tell people all the time, we don't have first reactors, we have first responders,
Right.
because they are trained and they have a methodical way of dealing with the situation. And if we're not prepared, if we don't know ourselves well enough, we will just react. We'll react.
Mm-hmm.
But
We just do it. I call it our CD-ROM, we have like a CD-ROM built into us from childhood. And to rewire, that's hard, but we can't react. We have to respond. We have to pause. We have to dig deep and understand, which is uncomfortable for sure. But I love that. Why do we have first responders? That's great.
yeah, yes. And so my goal has been, again, to raise the awareness of the need for, again, starting a conversation.
Mhm.
And, one of the questions that I asked on my podcast, is do you think that inner child healing, can be done alone? And a lot of my therapists and psychologists I've actually had on my podcast that said no. It can start, you know, as a solo effort, but in fact, depending upon the level of trauma and how impactful it is to your life today, there has to be some some kind of professional help or coaching, or you have to be open to having individuals actually objectively, in fact, look at your situation and offer you helpful and unbiased advice. So, yeah.
And I think that is the key, the objective and unbiased. And some of us have friends that can do that, but oftentimes we go to our friends for that advice and it's not so objective. And my friendships, my circle of friends, we do give real advice and it's tough love, right? But those are the kinds of friends I want.
Yeah.
And I agree. Yes, you can start the process, but you really need somebody because when you're in it, you can't always see it. And then when someone's able to repeat back to you what they're hearing, it sounds different. So from personal experience. So yes, I agree.
Yeah.
It's a multi-step, multifaceted process for sure. What has been so, you're creating this awareness with people, but what are you finding? Is there a lot of pushback, or do you find out what do you find that works the best as far as having them to be more receptive to digging deep and doing that inner work?
Well, the greatest reception I've actually gotten has been from my guests because they see the need. They
Right.
see how necessary it is. And it just kind of blew me away that so many of them was like, yes, that's exactly what I've been trying to tell people. That's, and so that at least let me know that I was on the right track. But now when it comes to individuals, and I remember asking this one lady, how do you help somebody who who is struggling to identify their work with or their need for inner child healing? And she said you don't, and that really caught me off guard because it's like, okay, I'm not saying that you do this to somebody at the gas pump or the person that's checking you out at the store, someone
Right.
you seeing them, hey, look, you look like you got some inner child wounds or traumas. Let's talk about that, you know. But when you build a relationship with somebody, in fact, when you're close enough to them, to where you can bring it up to them, if
Right.
they're open to it, you can call them on their stuff. It's like, why do you react that way? Why is this always the issue for you? And again, like you said, sometimes you can't see it when you're in it. And so I think we need people in our lives that, and we talk about biblical references, where the Bible says that faithful are the wounds of a friend. Of a friend. If a friend wounds you, it's for a good reason. I would rather tackle you and scar you up than watch you run off a cliff.
Right.
you know. And so if we don't have friends in our life that can check us, friends in our life that can have us look at ourselves, friends in our life that can really call us on the carpet for the stuff that we do, then honestly, we really don't have any friends.
Right.
A good friend is not going to leave you in the state that you're. They may love you where you are, but they don't want to leave you there. They want you to be better and do better. And for the life of me, I have the hardest time understanding why it's hard for people to see that your goal, your overall goal, is not to feed your ego, but to help them.
Right.
And it's like, but they're not ready for that.
Well, and I think we live in a culture where there's a lot of blame, right? We live in a blame culture. Everyone wants to blame everyone for everything. And
Right.
people take everything personal. People take other people's behavior, their actions, they're just taking it personal. And really, other people, we do have no power, just like you said on your show. She said, you can't. You can't help someone that doesn't want to help themselves. You can bring awareness, but you can't ultimately. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But but we can't force another individual, whether it's our child, whether it's our spouse, whether it's our partner, whatever it is, to do anything. We don't have control over other people. I think language is so important. And I think I think people are not careful enough with word choices. So that's one of the things I focus on is there's small changes you can make in the way you speak to people that creates more of an invitation and takes their guard down. For example, when we ask them like, well, why are you always like that? Even changing and shifting that, like, hey, I notice when we talk about this or when I say this, it's very upsetting for you because now I'm not attacking they don't feel under attack, even though either statement's not attacking them. It lets their guard down because I'm just noticing the behavior. Another example would be like if somebody walks in late to work, right? And you're like, hey, why are you late? What's going on? And they immediately feel defensive. They go to fight or flight to defend because maybe there's an excellent reason why they're late. And I think it's entering with an idea of positive intent, assuming the best. There's not enough of that in the world either. So if we enter into a situation like that differently by saying, hey, I noticed you were late today. Is everything okay? People are going to be more forthcoming. You're going to get more information. And now maybe it was a reasonable reason to be late. Maybe it wasn't, but now you have an opportunity to be empathetic if it was reasonable. And if it wasn't reasonable, to coach, to talk about, well, okay, that can't be a consistent problem. So let's talk about how we can support you or what we can do so to ensure that doesn't happen again, things like that. And it really makes a difference, I know, with kids, but I think it really makes a difference with all people, whether we're noticing or judging the behavior.
Yeah. And you are so, so true. There's something that I want to kind of just offer you a different way of thinking about this. And I have heard that statement so often that, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And that's true. But you can also create the thirst.
Oh, yeah.
And that in and of itself, to me, I mean, for instance, living a healed life, living an abundant life, living a life that is unencumbered by childhood wounds and trauma, for somebody that's observing and that's seeing, it would hopefully create in them, I want to do that. I want to live that life. I want to have that type of freedom. Like, how do you do that? How do you speak? How do you talk? How do you go up to folks? How do you share? How are you so vulnerable? As opposed to, I could never say that. And so, to me, demonstrating and showing that and showcasing that can create that thirst in them.
100%.
Yeah, so.
Well, and I've had that happen recently because of what we do, right? Like I'm constantly posting, I use social media, I'm posting motivational clips and videos,
right.
Quotes, because I generally want to help people. And a lot of people would be uncomfortable doing that. But what has come of that is I've had people that I haven't talked to in years reach out to me like, hey, can you go have coffee? And I'm thinking, okay, like, and I really don't know what they even want to talk about, but I'm like, well, let's go see. It's just, and the conversations have always been, I've been able to be helpful. It's added value to me. It's added value to them, I would hope. And it's been just very interesting in this journey yes, because people have a lot of limiting beliefs. They tell themselves, I could never do that. They just have never done it. I haven't done it yet. When we tell ourselves I can never do it, whether we think we can or we can't, we're right. So thoughts matter, mindset matters. And that's obviously a passion of mine and yours, because we're trying to rewire, these mindsets, these limiting beliefs that are that we've grown up with and that have been instilled in us, like be nice, be kind, and now I'm a people pleaser and that's not good. And it takes time. And I think a thing that I mention to people too, because I feel like the way to connect with them the best is to show up, to be authentic, to be humble, to share our own failures. We're not perfect. There is no perfect. I literally on my business card, it says, don't give up better for perfect. And it's like messy action, right? That's how we learn. We need to have a better relationship, I think, in the world with failure. I think that's a huge deficit right now because we have kids. that are graduating high school, going out into the real world, lacking any coping skills because parents have over unknowingly, they do it with the right intention, but they've protected their child too much. And they've sheltered them from any kind of pain or discomfort, and they've continually saved them. And now we're seeing this increase in anxiety and depression and in our youth, and a real lack of coping skills, to the point where I'm seeing with my friends that own businesses when they're trying to hire people, and I'm sure you see this out in the world as you're coaching in, corporations and working with big companies, that people are quitting because of the fear and the anticipation of failing, not even actually failing. They don't even get far enough in to fail. They're quitting before they even have the opportunity to fail, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yes, actually, I have, and I was the type of parent to let them burn their hand, let them bump their head, let them fall flat on their face. The sooner the better, because
Right.
the older you get, the higher the stakes.
100%. We want them to fail while they're in our care, because now we're there to support and coach, not fix, support
Right.
and coach. I was reading it. There's a new book called fairly new book called The Anxious Generation. It's kind of the hot topic in parenting and education right now. But if you haven't read it, you would love it. But it talks about how society, because we have our cell phones, and technology is a whole nother piece to parenting now. And people, not even parenting, just people out in the world, we're very distracted. We have constant notifications. There's statistics on that. And I know I'm having a hard time sometimes focusing with that thing around. Literally, if I'm reading like a morning reading or something, I have to set it away from me and turn it upside down, because otherwise it's like I can't separate from it.
Right.
And
Right.
we use it for work too. So it's like I need it, but I need my own boundaries with it. So if
Right.
I'm struggling as an adult with a fully developed brain, I can't even imagine what that looks like with our youth. And what the book talks about is how we've gone from a play-based childhood to a phone-based childhood, and the implications of that and the impact of that. And one of the things is we've overprotected our kids in the outside world, and we've underprotected them online. And this overprotection in the outside world we're really seeing a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of problems with that. Just what you said, our kids they need the opportunity in the safe place to fail and mess up, and we've got to let go of control. They need more autonomy. They need more bruises. They need more altercations with their friends and uncomfortable situations that we can,
Right.
again, be there as support and coach so they grow up into healthy adults.
That is so, so true. And that there are so many people who actually lack those skills. I was telling somebody, I said, if parents did their job, coaches wouldn't have one.
Right. Right. I
If,
mean, it's so true. It's so true. There's such a need. And I mean, yeah, and I could go on about that for forever. But it's interesting the more I learn, because this technology piece is new, right? We didn't have, unfortunately, I can't undo what I did with my kids, but now if I had known what I know now, I certainly would have introduced things later. So I think what happens is parents are overwhelmed and people are overwhelmed. So they throw their hands up because they're like, it's too much. So we're trying to manage our job, we're trying to manage our house, we're trying to do the laundry, we're trying to get the kids to activities, we're trying to do all of these things, trying to start a business or run a business, or, and it just becomes overwhelming. So I think being present for people is even harder because of this. Like you said, sitting in the discomfort of healing that inner self. It's hard to shut off the world to do that work. So you
yeah.
have to be really intentional. And that might be something like, I know in my journey, there was a time where I said, gosh, I was just driving one day and I'm like, what would my life look like if I didn't watch TV? Like, how much more time would I have? And I'm not saying I watched an insane amount, but I
Right.
was noticing that personally, I was using that as like a checkout, total dopamine hit. Just, I don't have to think about anything. But I was like, wow, if I didn't do that, what could I do instead? And it had a huge impact on me. And I gave it up for a year. And since I did, I haven't gone back. Now, will I sit down with my kids and watch a show? Will I watch a movie with friends or family? Yes. But I don't like how I feel when I just sit down by myself and do it. And I loved shows. I would binge watch shows with the best of them. But so it's funny how you really have to be intentional with time. So I don't know how much of that, like, have you seen I mean, because that, and yeah, that's again a part of this, because it used to be we could watch a show and it'd be on again next week, but now we can sit down and watch 20 something episodes of it, so it's just so different. So
Well,
many.
well, since you mentioned that, I want to tell you about an actual childhood trauma of mine.
Okay.
Uh, I don't know if any of your audience will, if I can remember the show called The $6 Million Man.
Oh, yes.
But I tell you, when I was a child, if you missed it, you had to wait, what, 13 weeks before the rerun came back on.
Right.
And I remember one Saturday, my mom, because I think it came on like 6 o'clock on Saturday evening. And it was about 4:30, probably about 4:45. And my mom was like, okay, let's go to the grocery store. I'm like, I'm in my little young mind, I'm doing the calculations. Okay, it's going to take us about
Right.
45 minutes to an hour. So, we could possibly get back in time for me to catch some of it. We got back home. It was almost 7 o'clock because she had to stop somewhere else too.
Oh,
So
no.
I'm bringing groceries in the house. I run in, I turn the TV on, and all I see is the credits roll.
No, kids have no idea. They don't know how good they have
They
it.
have no. And see, the thing about it was my friends, they were talking about the show. I hadn't even
Right.
seen it. It's like
Right.
spoiler alert. But I mean, I would have to wait another 13 weeks to see that particular episode.
No, it's crazy. And in some ways that was good. Like I almost am like, I say our kids are lucky, but maybe they're not, because there's constant they don't have to wait on anything.
Exactly. Instant gratification.
Instant gratification with everything. Instant gratification with communicate. Like we had to mail letters in college to our friends. We couldn't just call people, it just
FaceTime folks, right?
Yeah, you didn't. So there's definitely, there's definitely things that are nice about it, but there's definitely things that, wow, and you don't know what you don't know, so, but now there are statistics and things. So I think a lot of people are revisiting, what should we do with this stuff with our kids? But
Right.
it's crazy. Well, I love it. I love it because that is my passion. I do believe whether you're in business, whether you're a parent, whatever you're doing in life, to be the best version of yourself is the first step. And because it's not what we say, it's what we do. It's modeling it. And that's where respect comes in. And in order for you want your kids to respect you, that doesn't mean they railroad you. That means that they respect you. And as a owner of a business or a manager of a business, your employees need to respect you. If they don't respect you, it's not going to go so well, because everything does flow from the top down. And I think that's great, giving employees the opportunity, as opposed to, are you on climbing the right ladder?
Are you climbing the wrong mountain?
Wrong mountain, yes. So are you climbing the wrong mountain? Just focusing on that healing of inner self is going to help every business and every person, because then when we can be our best selves, we tend to not take things personal. We don't feel the need. We're very comfortable with who we are. I think, speaking of relationships, since your journey started with that, I think so often too, I find, is people, when they enter relationships, right, with another person, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a personal relationship, they often show up unauthentically. They show up as who they think the person wants them to be, because as human beings, we crave connection, right? We want to be seen, we want to be heard, and we want to be connected. So, and I think that's a whole nother conversation, but I think it's really important to be happy on your own. People don't make us happy. And to show up authentically, because that's sustainable. If you show up unauthentically and you get into a relationship with someone, whether it's a friendship, a business relationship, or a personal relationship, and you're unauthentic, you're not going to sustain that. Eventually the real you is going to come up, and then that's when there's conflict and problems. So I think it's a whole nother conversation, but I think you have to heal yourself to be able to show up authentically.
And that is the key. We have to make our own healing journey a priority. I've said this several times. If you don't heal from your hurt, you will bleed on people who didn't cut you.
Oh yeah.
If you don't heal
100%.
from your hurt, you'll heal. In fact, you will bleed on people who didn't cut you. And I've also shared this, that the bravest thing you can do is to heal from your hurt. Because
100%.
it's difficult, it's hard, it's challenging. Nobody wants to go through that process, but you have to see what's on the other side. A little side note, in fact, one of my books is entitled Shooting from the Hip, 7 Life Lessons I Learned from My Total Hip Replacement. Because I had a total hip replacement back in 2017.
Okay.
And I didn't even focus on the surgery. I focused on like the life I was going to have after it. And I mean, I honestly didn't really think about the complexity of the surgery and how many things could have gone wrong. I didn't think about that until after, because I was so focused on getting better. Because the
Right.
only thing I saw was myself getting worse. And it's like, if I just focus on the surgery, I'm missing it. I need to focus on the life that I want after, because that is what was the driving force for me getting the surgery and then getting past it. So
100%. And the same thing, I think too often people get fixated on it's no different. People get fixated on a problem or what's wrong. And my kids do this, right? They'll just be focused on like maybe they made a mistake. Maybe like my son had a party once that did not go, it didn't turn out well. And I was like, okay, that's done. Let's move on from that. What is it that we're going to do moving forward? How can we make that better? What choices could we change? But yes, it's like we need to focus on what we can control, which is in the future, not what was in the past. We want to learn from the past. We want to learn from those mistakes but yes. And I think too, seeing, when we are challenged and when life is hard and when we struggle and when we fail, that's when we grow. That good things come out of that.
right.
Instead of being a victim to difficult things or situations, seeing it as opportunity. I think shifting, but everything you're saying is everything I also talk about. It's just mindset. Focus, you get more of whatever you focus on. So that's amazing with that, because that's not a fun surgery, right? And if you're focused on the pain and what the discomfort and all the things you can't do, you're just going to be stuck in that, as opposed to sound like it worked out pretty well. Okay. So tell everyone how we find you. If somebody wants you to come speak, if they want to buy one of your books or check out your books and just learn more about you. And of course, I will put everything you share in the show notes for the audience, but let us know how we get to know Cicone better.
Okay, well, the easiest way for you to get to know me is to go to my website, ciconeprince.com. That's CiconePrince.com. And there you can find all of my books. You can actually book me for speaking engagements. And you can get links to my YouTube channel. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as TikTok.
Awesome.
But I really want to encourage individuals to invest in themselves. Now, in fact, you may be buying my book, Great, Good, Fine, and I'm grateful. But it does you no good. My coach called it shelf development instead of self-development, because they'll buy the book and they'll put it on the shelf. They'll just put it on. It's shelf development, not self.
I look at all the books on my shelves. It's funny because I do audio most of the time. So I haven't actually touched I have notes in some of them, but I like having it, but I typically listen.
Yeah. Well, so however you consume the information, make sure that you're not just consuming it for the sake of saying, I listened to it or I read it. What are you going to take from it and what are you going to implement? How are you going to move yourself to a better place and a better space in life? Because acknowledging doesn't change a thing. Action does. Action does. So you have to be willing to take action. Yes, it's good that you acknowledge. I'm glad that you admitted whatever it is you're dealing with and challenge. But that's just G.I. Joe, the cartoon I used to watch in the 80s. They would always end with an object lesson. And one of the things they said at the end is knowing is half the battle. Yeah. Just because you know something, just because you've admitted it, just because you've acknowledged it and accepted it. Okay, what are we going to do? And I shared this post a couple of weeks ago. People use their imperfections as a crutch instead of a call to action. People use their imperfections as a crutch instead of a call to action. They say, well, I have this, or I do that, or this happened to me, or this. Okay, all right, okay. What are you going to do about it? Huh?
Or you hear, I'll do it when.
Oh, 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 wow. Yeah, I'll
Like,
do it.
you know what I mean? Like, well, I'll do it when I get through this, when my kid goes to college, when there's,
Yeah,
they have a stipulate that they don't ever take the action because they're kind of always putting it off.
yeah. In fact, there was an African word for that, and it basically means that I'm going to consider your question for eternity. So I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no, but I'm going to continue to ponder it until you get to the point where you don't even care anymore. And it's like, okay, indecisiveness is a decision.
Right.
You,
100%. What's
yeah,
funny is when you were saying all of that, I wrote the word action because everything you were saying, I'm like, yeah, people, and I was in that boat for a long, I mean, I can personally share when I was on my personal development journey, which was about a 10-year journey to getting to this point. It was listening and listening and listening to all the books and doing the work and trying things on. And then all of a sudden it did click one day and I'm like, no, I got to do something with it. And I think people often don't because it seems too like they have a dream or a vision or a goal and it feels too far out of reach. And I think what really helped me is focusing not on the big goal but just do this, like this one step, the one thing. Pick
right,
one thing and do that, then pick the next thing and do that, and it's a build. Like, I didn't know anything about podcasting, I didn't know how to build a website, I don't know how to develop an LLC. I didn't know any of that. I just took, and I love saying this, messy action.
right.
And I say this again, don't give up better for perfect. Taking action will move you slowly in the right direction, but putting it off, procrastination is the killer of all dreams. Like, you're just not, it's good to push yourself. My dad has always told me throughout my entire life, and this has stuck with me, is if it makes you uncomfortable, you should probably do it. If it feels hard, you should probably do it.
Mm,
And it was like some of the best advice. So anytime I feel like, oh, I don't know, I'm like, okay, I got to do it. Like, I have to do it because I'm going to grow if I do. And it's uncomfortable things are hard, but we grow. So,
yes, yes, they are.
well, I love it. And I'm so, we'll have to do this again, but
Of
it's
course.
been so great getting to know you and hearing more about your journey and your story. I will add your books to my library so they can find them on your site, but we'll get them added to mine too.
Okay.
And so they'll be in two places. And yes, and I will look forward to your next event. You'll have to share that with me, and then I'll share it with my audience as well.
I
But thank you
definitely
so
will.
much for your time and joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate you so much.
Absolutely.